Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a project to share with you today. We're in the middle of our Alaska and Arctic unit study for our homeschool, and we're using this book called The Story of Snow, The Science of Winter's Wonders as inspiration for today's project. So I've got my Fabriano watercolor paper. This is 140 pound, and I'm using the larger sheets that are 11 inches by 15 inches because I'm going to be trimming these down into 5-inch squares. We're going to be using these for some trivia cards with some watercolor images on the front and some trivia questions on the back based on that book. I'm using my Winsor Newton watercolors, and you can't really tell, but those are some blues and purples. I also have this other set that has fewer colors, and I'm going to have my daughter use this one, but she does need a little bit of purple and some black, and I need to wash off that white because it got a little bit of green on it. No big deal, just use a little bit of water and a paintbrush. Okay, so now it's time to do our watercolors, and actually, making some snowflakes is actually a little bit more challenging than we expected. So I'm starting out with a hexagon. This is just a little kind of a template that I had from Tivana Tea from years ago that I just kept, and it's come in handy for some math and for this project. So we're going to start with some plate crystals because those are the simplest in my opinion to begin with, because the snowflakes with the 6 arms actually end up being really challenging, and my 9-year-old daughter, who is working alongside with me, ends up doing mostly plate crystals and then some clouds and some other things that are a little bit more simple. And then I end up doing a few of the 6-pointed stars, which take about anywhere from about 15 to 25 minutes each to do. So it is quite a time commitment. So if you don't want to spend so much time making these, don't worry, you can buy them already done on my website. That link is down in the description box below. Then you can print them out, and then it also comes with the questions on the back ready to go. So you can use these within your homeschool as part of your opening activities, or just to complement a unit study on snow or the winter. I'm using my Heidi Swap Color Shine in order to give our snow crystals a little bit of glimmer and shimmer, and it's just kind of a fun way to include some of my art supplies into our homeschool lessons. I love adding art wherever possible, and this is one opportunity where we can really dive into some of my scrapbooking supplies and bring them to our homeschool lessons. So I'm nearly done with this one, but I decide that once it's all done, and you do have to wait for it to dry at least a little bit before you start adding some other details, but I thought that I would add some details around the edges and the inside of this one, and I didn't wait for it to dry all the way, so you can see that that watercolor is spreading quite a bit. So I'm going to put these aside now that they're dry, and we're going to work on another one. And we're going to do these clouds, and I think the clouds are super beautiful and really easy to do. My daughter didn't like the first set of clouds that she did. She's using a lot more blue versus gray, and so she does kind of walk away from that one, but she does end up making some other ones later where I help her out with the colors because she didn't have the colors that I was using and she wasn't as pleased with them. And so I do help her out along this journey, and then she will probably only write maybe 1 or 2 questions on the back of her card. I did want them big enough where she could write them more easily, but I can write smaller, and so I can fit more questions. And since I ended up typing them up in the end anyway, we were able to fit quite a few questions on the back of each of these cards. All right, so let's move on to another image. We're going to save those 6-pointed stars till the end because they're really challenging. So then we did another one with clouds, and we're going to do another one with the speck on how these snowflakes begin in the first place, because you have to have a little speck of something. So I actually learned a lot in this process. That's one of the big perks for homeschooling, in my opinion, is that I learned so much while I'm teaching my own children, and it's just a really great opportunity to get a second chance at learning these things that you might have forgotten or not learned the first time around. So there she is doing her clouds, and I really like the way this one turned out, and I did help her kind of formulate those clouds to begin with, and then she was able just to watercolor the rest. So here's the first more challenging 6-pointed star, and it is quite a long, tedious process. And I start out with pencil just so that I could erase and also give it an outline so that when I watercolor on the inside, I already have that definition of the pencil. And then at the end, I just can go through with a darker watercolor just to outline it, or you can just leave it with the pencil. It's completely fine in the end. These are watercolors, so if you want to protect them long term, you can spray them with a matte adhesive, or a matte spray, or you can use your laminator and then they'll be protected that way. So you have a couple of choices, because if you do get water on these, because they are watercolors, they will spread and they will get ruined. So now I'm going to outline the entire snowflake. And this is like a really, really long process, but it allows me to give it a little bit more definition along those edges. And I want to just show you how slow of a process this is. By this point, I'm not having my daughter do any of these things that are this detailed. This is for me to do, for her to enjoy, because once we're done with all of these, we will have a set of cards that I've made, as well as the set of cards that she makes, and we'll have questions on the back of all of them, and that way we can play our own little trivia games to start out our lessons. And in fact, everyone can enjoy, not just my daughter. My son can enjoy this as well, since he did this unit, but he did not do this project. So now we're going to do another 6-pointed star, but this time I'm using my ruler just to make 6 lines. And of course, I did use my little hexagon template to begin with. And now I'm going to work on each of those little segments, those arms, and I'm just adding the same to each of those arms. So what's really curious about snowflakes is that while they are identical, they're not perfectly identical. Sometimes they don't grow exactly the same, or maybe a single arm grows longer, or maybe some parts of the crystal get broken off. And so it's okay not to be perfect. It's actually a little bit more authentic to have each one be just slightly unique, although the entire snowflake itself is going to have 6-form symmetry, and it will be identical and also unique from each other snowflake, which was such a hard concept to wrap our heads around. But seeing all the pictures in the book called The Story of Snow really helped us understand how much variety you can find in snowflakes. So I'm labeling each of these cards with a different title, which will kind of help guide the kind of questions that I add to the back of each card. And then of course I did add a little bit of that shimmer to this one, just to give it a little bit of shine as well. So here's a look at 6 out of the 8 cards that I completed. You're going to be able to see the last 2 cards when I print these all out. And I'm going to show you how to print them out and to laminate them if you want to do this project at home. So now I've got them all printed off on a color printer, and I've got the questions on the back. And now it's time to cut these, again, using my paper trimmer. And you can see that I did do a snow column, and I did do another snowflake that had some symmetry in it. Actually, they all have symmetry, but that one I labeled as symmetry. So I am using my paper trimmer, and this time I'm giving each card a little white border, which is optional. But when you do give it a little white border, you're only going to be able to fit 2 in each of these laminating sheets. And I'm going to show you another alternative so that you can fit more in each laminating sheet. And I'm using my Mink laminator, which is a scrapbooking supply, to laminate them. So it's quicker, it's faster, and you can actually do really large sheets as well. So now it's time to trim them, and I am giving them a little, maybe 1/4 or 1/8 inch border around each of those, so they end up being about 5 inches in the end. Now you can trim them all the way down so that there is no border at all, and I actually really like the way this looks as well. And it's easy to trim them down. You just follow the print on the front, not the questions on the back. And now you can see that you can fit actually 4 in each of these laminating sheets. And that way you can cut down how many laminating sheets you are using. And then we can send it through our Mink machine. Again, this is actually a foiling machine that you can use in order to add metallic foil to scrapbooking paper and other things. So now it's time to trim it down. Again, another 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch border around each one. And here's what they look like in the end, both with that white border and the questions on the back, and with no border at all. And of course, you have the questions on the back. And this makes a really great opening activity, and it makes it super easy to have them pre-made versus making them on your own. This was a really lengthy project, but here are my originals, which I really, really love, with our own questions on the back, which are the same that you can find on the printed version. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you'd like to see some of our other videos and tutorials for our Arctic and Alaska unit study, you can tap on the screen right now. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video for more information on the materials that I used. That link is down in the description box below. And if you'd like to purchase your own set, you can also find that on my website. That link is in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.